Welcome! I'm Johan Nilsson.
And I'm Lincoln Murphy. And this is Impact Weekly. We're here to help you make your customers successful. Each week, we answer your most pressing customer success management questions by relying on our years of experience with companies around the world.
Let's get this going. Welcome back. It's time for Impact Weekly. And today it's a special episode, special show actually, because we got a really good question about customer success, but actually more about the pod even. The question, I guess, is in the times of Spotify Wrapped and so on. We actually got a question, which episodes of Impact Weekly during 2023 were the most downloaded? So I thought that was something I did. I couldn't tell. I couldn't say directly, but we digged into that, and that's what we're going to share today. And we actually found some quite interesting things there, Lincoln, right?
Yeah. It was, to your point, I'm not really paying much attention to the stats. We put this out there almost to get these things out of our head, I think, to a certain extent. And the fact that some people listen to it, that's great. But yeah, so I'm not really paying close attention to the stats. So we dug into it, and we have what are the top 3 downloaded episodes. But to your point, there's some interesting themes that came out of this that I think is more indicative of what was going on in customer success in 2023 than just what people were listening to on our podcast. And I think that's what's really important here. And as we were going through this, and we'll talk about this more, but remember, so just like the question for today, these questions come in from listeners, or they're questions that we get in our daily work, questions that we run into in our Impact Academy training. Participants in that will have questions, and we think they're interesting. So the topics that we cover on the pod are timely and are what's on the mind of customer success professionals out in the world at that time. So I think what we found in terms of the things that we covered in this podcast is interesting because of that, not just because it's something that we covered on the pod, if that makes sense. This isn't about us. It's about what's going on in customer success.
Exactly. We pick up these questions from all these different groups and customers we meet and training programs, and people send them in to us. But it's also, if we take the most downloaded, I guess that's also looking at everyone listening to the pod, what they have, what's top of mind. And I think that's also verifying that these are the most critical things people are looking at, thinking about, and hopefully getting some good advice on from the pod.
No, that's a good point. So it's the prompt to do the episode comes from real life situations. And then, yes, the fact that people are consuming that means that that question wasn't just some one-off thing that somebody had. It was really indicative of something that is a concern or a situation or whatever that people are really dealing with in the real world. So I think that's pretty cool. Some stats that I was able to pull just about the pod that I think are interesting is Apple and Spotify are the 2 main ways that people consume this podcast, which was just an interesting fact. But more interesting to me was the fact that our top 6 listening areas are the United States. We get about 42% of our listeners from the United States, followed by United Kingdom, which is about 9%.
Interesting.
Right. That's interesting. And then Sweden, where you're based, where Start Deliver is based. So that makes sense. That's about 8%, right up there with the UK. Canada is at 7%. And then Germany is at 5%. And we round out the top 6 there with Brazil at about 3%. So I think that's interesting. Certainly, I'm in the U.S. Customer success in the U.S. has been around probably the longest, and it's more established, and that makes sense. Sweden's where you're based. The UK one is just interesting to me. And of course, I have exposure in Brazil. Yeah. Canada and Germany are just also interesting to me. I don't necessarily have a lot of connections there.
No, but that's
interesting thing.
It is. But it's also, I think we do this with the Impact Academy. We have trainings and we have really multinational groups. And I think it's very common that we have 10 at least nationalities in the same program.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But the similarities they're striking, right? It's not, of course, there's some cultural differences and so on, but everyone in customer success have a lot in common. And I think this goes to show also that, yeah, it's very much a universal concept and a universal movement. So I think it's exciting.
What you just said is interesting for lots of different reasons. But yeah, in Impact Academy, we always have a really good mix of people from around the world, and they do bring different cultural norms and points of view and all of that. But yeah, underlying, we're all dealing with the same things here. And that's interesting. And it kind of shows with how many different countries are consuming this content, that you would think, what is somebody in Brazil versus somebody in Germany versus somebody in UK? There's obviously going to be some pretty significant differences. Sure. But we're all going through the same thing. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
But what are some of those things that we are all
Yeah.
dealing with?
Yeah. So I would say, I think we found some commonalities between some of these episodes, but the number one episode in 2023 was episode 22, which is basically, it's called "Say Goodbye to Low, High, and Tech Touch: What to Do Instead." And the question that lie behind this episode was, I'm looking to move more accounts that are not paying us enough to low touch motion. Any suggestions on how to do that?
Yeah. And so this falls into the category of what we've labeled as efficiency/capacity planning. And this episode is actually our number 4 all time. So that even includes what we did in 2022. So this is a very popular episode. And I think this trend of dealing with efficiency, especially the latter half of 2023, we became much more efficiency focused. In fact, episode 51 of this pod, which just came out a couple of weeks ago, it's where we declared that customer success is in its efficiency era now, as we've pivoted from a growth focus to just a profit focus, which means trying to do more with less and all of that stuff. Before we get into talking about that specific episode 22 about saying goodbye to low, high, and tech touch, we also had episode 34 called Unlocking Potential, how to allocate customers to CSMs. Episode 29, scaling customer success, high impact versus low impact activities. Episode 11, ARR per CSM is outdated, capacity planning done. So we covered this topic in 5 specific episodes. And of course, we mentioned this topic. We mentioned this idea of capacity planning, of efficiency in probably every episode, because even in the best of times, and when you're not constrained, you're not trying to get as much done with as little as possible, you need to understand what it's going to take to ensure your customers are successful, to understand what their appropriate experience is and deliver that. So capacity planning is something that we talk about in Impact Academy. We talk about it with customers and clients and anybody, frankly, that will listen, because it's something that isn't just about eking out efficiency. It isn't just about being operationally efficient. From that standpoint, it's really about making sure that we're delivering the appropriate experience and having the right resources in place, the right coverage model, that kind of thing. Now, if you're going to move into efficiency, you're going to move away from growth or just away from a looser run ship, and you're trying to tighten things up and you're trying to be more efficient, then capacity planning is absolutely something you have to do. But with that, let's talk about that one episode. You asked, or you read the question. I'm looking to move more accounts that are not paying us enough to low touch motion. Any suggestions on how to do that? Of course, we do a deep dive on that in the episode, but what are some of the one or two things that you either remember from the episode or even would add to that now?
No, but I think, of course, we do with all these questions, is that we try to, go a little bit above, or what is it coming from behind the question? Maybe it's a better word. And I think this is clearly someone trying to become more efficient, but I think there's some things there in the question that we should, bring up that are common misconceptions or misunderstandings that we want to help people fix. Especially this, it's very common that you segment your customers on what they're paying, the ARR, and that can get you in a poor position.
Yes. And so this idea of low touch, tech touch, whatever, low touch, high touch, tech touch, that's kind of a legacy model in customer success management. It is generally those touch levels are tied to what the customer pays us. If a customer doesn't pay us very much, they get the tech touch or the low touch. If they pay us a lot, they get the high touch. And it doesn't take into consideration what the customer's actual appropriate experience would be. It's not always just about what they pay. We may have really big customers that pay us a lot that would prefer we just stay out of their way and give them something that would look more like tech touch because they have the resources, they have the experience, they just don't need us.
Yeah.
But if we're trying to just only think about this from the standpoint of if they pay us a lot, they deserve more, then we really miss the mark. And so I think that's how we approached this question on that episode. But we also approached it from the standpoint of not being punitive to customers that don't pay us very much. And it's almost like these customers don't pay us very much, so they don't deserve more. Or look, the reality is they don't pay us very much. I can't afford to give them more. Okay, that's fine. But we do need to recognize that if you choose to give your customer less than what is appropriate for them, not based on what they pay, but an understanding of what their appropriate experience is. If we cannot deliver an appropriate experience because they don't pay us enough, so it's not economically feasible to give them an appropriate experience, then we shouldn't have those customers. We're going to give them an inappropriate experience. They're going to churn. And then I know we talked about in that episode, the vicious cycle that happens, right? When we have lower revenue customers for whom we give an inappropriate experience and they churn. Yeah. And then we say there's just a lot of churn in that cohort. So then we give them less. And then there's more churn. So
you say that you move these low-paying customers into tech touch mode. They get some automated emails, and you save your time that you should have spent, that you used to spend on having calls or doing more the qualitative work as a customer success manager. Then they start churning all of a sudden, and then you do firefighting, and you end up spending even more time.
Them, right. Exactly. Now you're chasing them, trying to save them. You saved time. I see what you're saying earlier. You saved time. Now you're trying to save them.
Right.
And now you're focused on even like less efficient things. Now you're focused on even more low percentage activities of trying to save customers that have one foot out the door because you gave them an inappropriate experience. It's a mess. We just have to be careful. And again, if you cannot deliver an appropriate experience in an economically feasible way for you, then you need to have a real conversation internally about whether or not we should be having customers like that. It's something that I think we all probably know that. It's not something a lot of people like to talk about. The fact that we may have to say, look, this cohort, we're going to have to let them churn, but we need to make sure we're not bringing in more customers like them.
Yeah. And I think this is also something that on a whiteboard or like on a high level, it's a very easy way to segment customers. And it sounds good in theory, but in practice, you end up with a mess a lot of times when you do it like this.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great episode on that topic, and we go through a little bit more detail. So I think efficiency, capacity planning has been a big theme of the year, basically. And it's, as we said, like our last or a couple episodes ago, we did one more even deeper on that. And I think it's also given the situation and the market situation most companies are in, and the economy in general, and so on. It is more of that type of year for a lot of companies out there. It makes sense, I would say, like on a general theme of things here.
Right. And no spoilers, but next episode we're gonna talk about the things that were trends we see for 2024.
Yes.
This may or may not be on that list of things that we see.
Maybe we should look in the crystal ball and try to forecast the most popular topics for the next year's episodes. And then we need to check
compare and contrast. Yes.
Exactly.
Yes. What do they say? Yeah. The hardest thing to predict is the future. So let's cut us some slack on that one. But I think that'd be fun actually to be able to do that and then go back and see just how completely off base we really were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. But so capacity planning or efficiency, let's call it efficiency. I think it's a big theme for the year. The number 2 episode following this one we talked about right now was one about gold discovery. So the episode was number 17, the power of gold discovery. And the actual question that we got there was, could you do an episode on how to properly conduct gold discovery with customers?
Yeah. And again, if you've listened to just about any episode of this podcast, goal discovery has certainly come up for you. It's the thing we talk about more than anything else. I bet if we analyzed the transcripts of all of our episodes, that would be probably the number one thing. Because really, we talk about this, and we talked about it in that episode. If you don't know what your customers' goals are, you can't really be doing customer success. And I say that, I think, and in that episode, I say it, and I'll reiterate it here. I can sometimes say that just to be provocative, to shock you. If you don't know your customers' goals, and you're not doing customer success, then what are you doing? But I don't always say it just to be provocative. It's true. It's if we think about it, customer success is when our customers achieve their desired outcome through their relationship with us. Desired outcome is made up of their goal plus their appropriate experience. If we don't know what their goal is, then we, based on that definition, we cannot deliver. Right. And so goal discovery is just at the core of what we should be doing with our customers.
Yeah.
Because look, if I can understand what their goal is, which is their objective plus their time frame, then I can build a plan and take them from where they are to where they need to go. And if it's a situation where we have a very normalized process that all of our customers basically go through, there's not a lot of deviation from that from one customer to another. By simply understanding what their goals are, I can use that understanding to motivate action through this relatively basic, normalized, maybe even boring process, especially if we're talking about a life cycle stage that's boring, like onboarding. If I can keep them focused on why they signed up, keep their eye on the prize, that kind of thing. So goal discovery is so important. And this episode was, I think this was episode 17. So by that point, we'd talked about goal discovery a lot. And probably this person was like, come on, you guys talk about this all the time. How do I actually do this? And so we do go through the process of break down what the goal discovery framework is. And of course, it's just a podcast episode. So even though we do a deep dive on that, there's a deeper dive on goal discovery that we do in our Impact Academy training. But that episode is a good primer, a good baseline, good fundamentals look at goal discovery. And you can actually start to implement that just from that episode. And of course, we have other episodes on goal discovery, episode 39, which is where we talk about continuous goal alignment, which we label as the secret to world-class customer success, because it is. And that is, as our customers evolve, their goals change, right? Maybe they don't meet their current goal, they switch to a new one. Maybe they meet their current goal or their initial goal, and then they have another one, which I said maybe, but it's only maybe to the fact that they would have reached their goal. They will always have another goal. Customers always have goals.
Exactly.
Remember that.
Yeah. But it changed a lot.
They change.
Quite probably more often than they actually achieve the goals. Almost.
But exactly. And that's a thing. We need to be prepared for that, right? We need to understand that it's okay if a customer doesn't reach their goal if they changed it. If they didn't change their goal and they didn't reach it, that's an issue, right? They went off course. The objective stayed the same, but the time frame that they had in mind, they were not going to be able to reach that because the cadence that they were working on got interrupted. Now they've failed to reach their goal, even if they do reach their objective, because they didn't do it in that time frame that they had set out to do. That's a problem. But a lot of times customers or companies look at it just from the customer's perspective. As a company, priorities shift, market conditions change, and their goals are necessarily going to shift too. We just need to make sure that we're staying in sync on that. But also, if we're doing our job, they'll start stacking goals. And now we need to understand all of the different things that they're trying to do as a company, certainly that they're trying to do, and our product would help them achieve.
Right.
So that continuous goal alignment is really critical. That's episode 39. Episode 38, we talk about goal discovery again in general, but then we go into some more detail on that. We call it the essential task you don't have time for until now. So that episode is not just about goal discovery as the framework and the process, but how do you make time for it? And of course, that you should make time for it. But really, we give some tips and tricks on actually applying goal discovery to your daily work as a CSM. So those are the episodes that we talk about goal discovery in some detail. But again, we talk about it in every episode.
All the time. But I think still it's interesting to see how big this episode was on overall of all topics, basically. And I think it's also linked to where we are in this year, how it's been. I talk to a lot of leaders in customer success, and I hear from a lot of people that we like maybe, again, going from this maybe growth mind to more of a, protect the home base. And a lot of leaders are talking about, like, we need to get back to doing real customer success again. We lost that for some period of time, and we were doing more sales than customer success on existing customers. And if you've been doing that for a while and you lost track of, are they achieving their goals? Are we doing real customer success? Then you need goal discovery. So I think that ties quite well into what I hear from a lot of people as well have during this year.
Yeah, and that ties really nicely into the third theme that we discovered when looking back on this, and that is expansion. So even though we've talked about how we've pivoted, reality is one of the more efficient ways to grow, or one of the more efficient ways to operate is to grow revenue from your existing customers. So if you want to have more revenue under management, you want to have more ARR per employee, which we've seen as a metric pop up recently, not just customer success, but in general, just revenue per employee being a metric that SaaS companies, for example, are looking at. You can get rid of employees, which is painful and less than ideal in a lot of situations, especially for the employees, the human people. Or you can grow revenue from your existing customers so that you now have more revenue under management by your CSMs and therefore more ARR per employee. And even in the hard times, even in times that are a little bit more turbulent or unstable or whatever market conditions exist, you're always going to have a cohort of customers that are ready, willing, and able to buy more from you. So you can't fall into the trap of the sky is falling, so we assume everybody is in a situation where they're not ready to buy more. That's just not the case. Certainly it's going to vary, and if things are really bad, that cohort may be smaller, but we have to understand that some customers are still going to buy more. And so we talk a lot about that. We talk about the fact that really expansion is success. And in this case, and this is our third overall, our third most popular episode of the year, is episode 23, Selling to Existing Customers, Why Most Companies Leave Money on the Table. And that was the most popular expansion episode. What was the question for that episode?
Yeah, so the question behind that one was that it was coming from someone that's building a new CS team and have been talking to a lot of people and wanted our opinion on how who should be doing the upgrade, basically. Should that be customer success or sales, right?
Yes, that's right. I think that was one of the episodes where we actually talked about expansion and stuff in 3 other episodes. And I'll share what those are in a minute. But this is one where we really talked about sales needing to stay in its lane. Ideally, if you're building from scratch, you're building something from the ground up, you have the ability to shape things the right way. We talk about making sure that we decouple revenue generation from sales in the mind of everybody in the company. I think one of the limiting factors right now in terms of growth, even though if we pivot away from growth to efficiency, we're still trying to grow the company. We're just trying to grow it as efficiently as possible. One of the things that's actually limiting growth in a lot of companies is this mindset that any revenue generation has to flow back through sales. Sales actually becomes the bottleneck in that process, when what we need to do is decouple revenue generation from sales and say, look, sales does a great job at bringing in new customers. That's what they're there for. That's what they're good at. Let's keep
Mm.
them focused on that. And let's have, under the customer umbrella, basically any revenue that's going to come in from existing customers happen there. And there we say that could be the customer pushing a button in the app themselves to add something. That could be the CSM pushing a button to add something to their account. It could be an account team that works with their steering committee and goes through a whole procurement process. Whatever it is, we just need new business sales doing their thing and customer growth over here doing their thing. And now we have a two-pronged growth approach to business, which ends up operating much more efficiently. So I think that's the episode where we really brought some of those things to light.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we covered expansion in depth in several episodes. We also did one, how you maybe if you're not feeling as a natural person to do expansion as a customer success manager. We have one episode that we talk about how you can thrive in expansion sales, even if you perhaps don't see yourself as that type of person.
Yep.
Also,
Episode
that's
7.
something we cover a lot as well in our Impact Academy. We have an expansion program as well there, where we go in depth to basically how to operate the whole expansion process, do proper expansion as part of your customer success journey with customers.
Yeah, as
we also
record this, we're in the final week of our expansion program, which is the final one for this year. And yeah, it's just so interesting. We, in that program and in these episodes where we talk about it, it's once you get past this idea that revenue generation has to be a function of sales, all of a sudden you're like, oh, so my CSMs can actually drive a significant amount of revenue, but in a customer-centric way and not have to be salespeople. This is amazing. But if you can't decouple or separate this idea that revenue generation is a function of sales, then it's hard to think of CSMs trying. So that's why I say we have to just separate those things. We're in a commercial relationship with our customer. Nobody is under any delusion that we're not. They buy stuff from us. They pay for the product. And there may be things that, in order to reach new goals, in order to reach their goals faster or whatever, they might need to buy something more from us. So it's really interesting.
Absolutely.
And again, that episode 7, the secret to thriving in expansion sales, even if you're not a natural, I think is a really good episode if you have concerns about, for you as a CSM or for your team, about not being salesy.
Yeah.
And I think we addressed it pretty well there. And we talk about it in a couple of other episodes, talk about expansion in episode 16, customer growth, discovering and achieving your expansion potential. And then episode 52, which we just did, which is expansion is success, why land and maintain is not enough. And that's really where we just lay out, just in very plain words, if your customers are not expanding and there's a logical reason why they should, that's a red flag. So
they're actually at risk.
Exactly. I think
they're on you otherwise.
I think we on that episode just threw down the gauntlet and we're like, you know what? It's time to stop just being nice here. And we're just going to say it. Like, if you're not expanding your customers, there's something wrong, most likely, with your operation. If there's a logical reason for your customers to expand, if you've sold them everything up front and there's no logical reason, that's different. But we need to understand that expansion is success because our customers evolve.
And that's also, like, that point, I think, is also, that's why we also brought up this important thing that as head of customer success, you need to be part of the pricing and plans, because if you don't have that offering in your platform and you're not thinking about that and not basically working with the product team and the management team to basically evolve your offering, you will start churning customers because they outgrow you. So it's also part of the equation here too. And I think we touched on that as well in episode 16, actually, where we talk more about how you can look at the, expansion as well in potential in your customer base.
Yes. And, we talk about expansion forecasting in episode 16 as well, where we need to be looking at expansion as one of the most predictable revenue streams in our company. Again, everything is based on new business sales usually, and new business sales forecasting is a well accepted thing that is generally just completely made up. Sales forecasting is, here's what we want to do. Now I can put together a whole forecast there and tell you exactly how we're going to hit those numbers based on converting leads to opportunities and converting those to sales. And it's a numbers game. There's a lot of hustle and there's a lot of hope and there's a lot of just offering rewards to salespeople to do whatever they have to do and quotas and all this stuff. It's making up a number and figuring out how we're going to hit it in new business sales. And that's fine.
Yeah.
It's all made up anyway. Go after it.
Yeah.
With existing customers, we have a lot of context. We know exactly the progress that our customers are making. We know their health score. We know their usage. We know what's going on with our customers. So we should be able to, in a much more predictable way, without all the hustle and hope, lay out, this is what's going to happen in our customer base in terms of new revenue for the next quarter, the next year, whatever, based on the trajectory of our customers. And then all our CSMs have to do is get our customers to the next progress milestone. And some of those progress milestones are going to have an associated expansion opportunity with it. And all you have to do is make sure that you've orchestrated that properly. And now we'll have most customers that get to that milestone taking the upsell opportunity because we did this right. None of this was salesy. All of this was easy to forecast, but you have to look at it the right way.
Yeah,
and everybody that's going through our expansion training right now, I think we get a lot of, oh, wow, I hadn't thought of it that way. And then it's as soon as you hear that sort of epiphany, it's like, this makes total sense. There's nothing magical about this. It's not that complicated.
No.
It really just took thinking about it the right way. And hopefully these episodes on expansion will get you to be thinking about expansion the right way. And as we said in episode 52, expansion is success. It's not something extra.
Right.
It's just a part of the customer's journey, and we need to just accept it that way. So this was an interesting year, year to review. This was our first full year doing this pod.
Exactly.
We started in 2022, but we only had a few weeks, the last part of the year. So this was our first full year doing this. Time flies, but it's been awesome. And I love working with you. I love our conversations, but it's mostly me talking over you.
But so if we go back to this question now, like we do, so basically 2023 wrapped is basically the number 3 things that customer success is the top of mind things in customer success is basically efficiency, goal discovery, and expansion. And you can get a lot of those from these episodes we mentioned. But what we'll do for the next episode is that we're going to look in the crystal ball and tell you a little bit what we believe is going to happen going forward in 2024. And we also have a bunch of new programs with Impact Academy. So make sure you check those out as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. And see you soon. Hey, thanks for listening. Do you want to bring your customer success to the next level? Check out Impact Academy. We have training programs for customer success managers and for leaders in customer success.